Now, the insights of J. Martin on our world. Society and politics. The J. Martin interview. Right, so now it is the 12th of June, Thursday the 12th of June 2025, and there's this ongoing situation in Los Angeles where protests have erupted because of a sudden, really it's like a sudden sweeping action to deport people, using this government department called ICE, which is I did look up what it was, like it was customs or whatever it is, enforcement, and it's led to people are losing, in some cases, friends and neighbours. They're getting deported out of the country, sometimes to an El Salvador prison, which seems particularly it seems to put Guantanamo sort of vibes about it again. We'll just go back to the beginning with this and just and see if we can just get a summary of how did all this begin?
Well, it started, I believe it was last Wednesday, with ICE, the Immigration Enforcement Agency in the United States, conducting raids in Los Angeles. And,
Friday.
It was Friday?
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
The 6th.
Been going on longer than I thought. Anyway, and they were arresting people. They were going into their workplaces and dragging them out and that sort of thing. And, the deal was supposed to be, we're only arresting the criminals. We're only throwing out the bad people. But that's not what's been going on at all. They've been going into churches and arresting people. They've been going to elementary schools and arresting parents at graduations, leaving the little 6-year-olds, on stage crying because their parents are taken away right in front of them. It's just been very strange. And I mean, they went into the fashion district and arrested a bunch of seamstresses. It's like, come on, we're not talking about hardened criminals here. We're talking about hardworking people that are working to take care of their families and that are contributing to society and that are paying taxes. So it's upsetting to people. So it started with people in the immediate area where the raids were going on, gathering around the ICE agents and saying, what are you doing? What are you doing? Why are you taking him? He's not a criminal. He's got a right to be here, blah, blah, blah. And so that's how it started, were skirmishes like that. Now, Rob, I don't know if that's how you saw it. And then when they called in the National Guard, that's when things escalated. And that's when the violence began. And there has been some looting over the last couple of days or so. But I honestly don't know who's really doing that looting. And the Republicans, well, particularly the Republican president, keeps accusing Democrats of having hired everybody for the protest. And for one thing, I can guarantee you they are not hired. They are full of emotion and and indignation. Yeah, rage. So it's been really crazy. And then, of course, then they brought in the Marines. But I don't see how they can do this. You're not supposed to use the military against American citizens, especially on our own soil. So this is really a test. We may not pass it, but so far, this administration has done what it wanted to do without regard for the law.
Which is just to get people out. They say is undocumented, but no matter how much of a part of the community they become now, anyway. Also, although we're speaking about LA, and you're from LA, speaking from and about LA, it's actually something that seems to be going on across the country as well. There are raids across the country in other cities, and there are the resulting protests. So New York City, Boston, Seattle, Atlanta, Dallas.
Yeah, I think there's about 35 cities that are engaged right now, give or take. And then I don't know, Michael, if you saw it, but I sent you a map um, of where all the locations are for the protests that are going to be happening on June 14th. At the same time as the Washington D.C. Uh, big fancy $143 million parade.
Oh yes, I've got that at the same time. There's a lot of spots on that map as well. It's most of the population centres of the whole country.
Exactly. I was really amazed to see it, and quite frankly, it makes me happy. It also is scary because what can happen in each of those cities, but uh, hopefully people will try to stay peaceful and
Well, I'm doing a screenshot video now. Actually, I'm doing another type of video where you can where I'm sort of bringing up things on the screen that complement what we're saying. And if you're watching that, I'm not sure if that's what we'll do, but you'll be able to see all these spots across the country. And they've had the audacity on this map to still call it the Gulf of Mexico. That should be the Gulf of America.
my God, that must be a mistake. That must be. They're going to get in trouble. I tell you, like the Associated Press, who refused to say Gulf of America. That is so silly.
Is that on Google Maps?
Yeah. Yes, it's not.
Well,
It's actually not
again,
Google Maps they're using, or is it? Or it might be actually because it's been so customized. It is Google Maps actually.
Rob, I think that's a really good point because, well, firstly, Michael, great to be back on the show. But what an unfortunate reason that we're having to do this. I think Rob raises a good point. Oh, well, it's on Google Maps. Well, that depends on whether or not you're in the United States or whether or not you're in, well, any other country that still recognizes the Gulf of Mexico. What I wanted to just come in with Renee's point is really from a historical perspective. Now, I've been saying to Renee and others that where are we in terms of a historical analogy? And the answer is, history doesn't repeat itself. Situations aren't the same. But I do just want to discuss a sobering thought. I've been saying that we're in circa 1934, but actually, I think we've skipped ahead slightly to circa 1938. You see, in 1938, there was something called Kristallnacht, where there were raids against businesses. Some of what we've seen, what actually hasn't been reported as much as it should. A lot of this is getting out to friends and family on social media, and which is somewhat perverse given the use of social media in the alternative, from the Trumpian notion. But let's be clear in what happened in 1938, which was the arrest of people who were going about their day-to-day business. To mention, this idea that you had people of a religious, an ethnic, a sexual orientation, whatever, who were dragged. It doesn't matter whether or not this was, a family friend, or there was a project going on at school, an award ceremony. It doesn't matter. People were dragged out, and we know that their destination were the early camps. And this is essentially, this is essentially what is happening in the United States. Where are people being taken to isn't a question that seems to be being answered too much, certainly by the media, who in many regards are too frightened to stand up to the new king. Or even worse, actually, I wouldn't denigrate monarchy even with this. The new dictator.
Yes, yeah, that's more to the point. It's been really crazy. I mean, Robb was telling me this morning a story that I missed overnight. I saw the headline, but a U.S. senator was arrested in Sacramento yesterday. Robb, why don't you tell the story? You know.
That was just this morning, a couple hours ago.
Oh my gosh! I'm
Yeah.
looking at the news right now, but I guess it was.
Yeah.
And
And I brought up the question of was it Google Maps because people were setting those Waymo cars, the self-driving cars here the other day. 5 of them were set on fire and vandalized, but I didn't know that one of the theories is that they were set on fire because Google owns Waymo.
Oh, right.
So, but
So
now
you said something.
Elon Musk. Go ahead.
You had said something about the cameras. I guess the cars have cameras all around, and that's the way they operate.
Yeah.
And that you thought that was maybe why they were setting
Yeah.
those cars on fire so that they couldn't be videoed.
Right.
But yeah, that's another thing that happened. But so what happened with Senator Alex Padilla?
So he was in Sacramento to go to a press conference, and he found out that Kristi Noem, I think the defense secretary, was speaking 2 doors down. So he went into that room to go ask her some questions. And as soon as he opened his mouth to ask questions, they pushed him out and tackled him down and arrested him and pushed him to the ground. So
That's insanity.
yeah. But of course, they're saying that he was disruptive and he shouldn't have, he shouldn't have been there. And so, but he wasn't at all. So.
But again, Bob, there were deep historical analogies here. I mean, if people don't know, they should perhaps look up the Reichstag fire. We had in Germany, as we did in Italy, incidentally, this isn't just a sort of Germany thing. We did have, anyone who stood up and said anything contrary to the new dictator would find also themselves arrested.
Right.
And I just wanted to throw into the mix a discussion I had with René earlier this week. It really does feel like it was yesterday, but really, it wasn't. But okay, what we've got is in California, if this ends up bleeding into the streets of other states, will the dictator end up sending in troops there? And that seems to be the direction of travel, given this weekend's Not My King protests, which will interrupt what is and can only be from anyone outside of the US. Seen as a dictator's military review, and so American democracy, not that it's exactly been brilliant since the founding of your country, but then again, I'm from Britain, so you can feel free to critique and all the rest of it because Britain doesn't have this. But what we most certainly have is a really dangerous precedent. If it bleeds over into other states, will the dictator then send in the troops? This threat often from elements of the, perversely, right-wing conspiracy branch, shall we say, of the MAGA movement, who have said, oh, well, it'd be Biden or it'd be Clinton or it'd be someone who established martial law. Well,
Yeah,
I've got to say, there is a right-wing populist president, if we're still using that title, who has deployed the troops into a state that he doesn't like. Where does that end?
that's it. Who knows? And that's the right thing to do. You're right. They may call out the military, but what do? Acquiesce? You have to stand up to the bully. That's the only way That's the only thing he understands.
Well,
Or any.
a genocidal right winger who we had as prime minister called Winston Churchill. I mean, I'm saying this on behalf of well, a majority of what we call India today, as well as any striking workers. We know that what Churchill did was problematic in Britain. What he did say, however, in terms of fighting against a dictatorship, was either you stand up or you go down without fighting. We in the trade union movement have a slightly different phrase, which is, well, I'll paraphrase this for an American audience, but
We'll try to understand. Go ahead.
no, it's just a very common phrase in sort of in the UK. So I'm just figuring a way in which it could be, from a country that perhaps doesn't have the tradition it used to have of trade unionism or labor unionism. But divided we beg, together we stand.
Mm.
And so when you are out on a protest and you are out on a demo, the energy of solidarity breeds more energy.
Yeah.
And that's the reality. I mean, Michael, I think you've been on demos, so we've been sort of consuming. I think that's true.
Yes, like an energy of everyone working together for the same thing, and it's almost like there's more of an achievement in the number, or a feeling in that number that almost anything's achievable, despite what's being faced.
An exhilaration that's catching, that's contagious.
And I will say, in the United Kingdom, we signed the trade union movement, but we didn't really have a revolution. You can argue the English Civil War. No, it's the United States who kicked off the notion of revolutions, really, that it is possible to overcome a deranged king and all of this. Wasn't us.
No.
We didn't revolt, did we, really? I mean, we sent letters, if you want the Chartists, but there we go. I just want to bring something else up, and I will be quiet, but there are also analogies to what in the UK is known as the Battle of Orgreave. There were some famous pictures, so wherever you're listening to this, Michael, I'm not exactly sure just how far the range is, but if you are listening from overseas, Orgreave is spelled Orreave, and there is a very famous picture, at least in Europe, of someone about to be hit by a truncheon. Or I think, René, you described it as a baton, but truncheon, baton, whatever it is, about to be hit. Actually, that was a journalist. And here we are again with journalists being attacked. And the thing was, at the Battle of Orgreave, during the miners' strikes, plural, the police, not quite being the police, in fact, being disguised military.
Yeah, well, we don't know who these guys are that, are disguised with their faces all covered. They could be anybody, and they won't tell you who they are or give their badge numbers or their military IDs or whatever. It's just these guys come in, swarm in, and start dragging people away. And you really don't know what's happening, where you're going. I did hear that some people, and I'm not sure if this is absolutely true, but this is the rumor, that some people were being arrested and then put on a plane immediately. Rob, have you any information on that?
I didn't hear immediately, but I did hear overnight, arrested and put on.
Yeah, within the day, within the
Yeah,
same
yeah.
24-hour period.
Yeah, for sure.
So obviously they didn't appear before a judge or have any
So
kind of due
no
process.
due process, and a lot of people getting arrested are citizens, have been here, and going to the immigration meetings like they're supposed to, and getting arrested there. So
Yeah, and this
Exactly.
is
while they have their kids with them, and the
well,
kids get taken too. So
and it's people of just to do maybe the arrived. Do they is it always undocumented cases or people who've just been here for a while and so on? How so is that how do they identify these people? Well, just actually before answering that, I just want to say if anyone's listening outside the UK, you're probably not aware of what the Battle of Orgreave thinks it is. You probably think it's a Civil War battle or something, or it was actually the miners' strike in the 80s for better working conditions. With Arthur Scargill as trade union leader.
Sorry, Michael, I do have to say I'm sorry, but that was the Fourth English Civil War.
Well, yeah, I mean, yes, I suppose you could say it took the form of an English Civil War, yes, rather than the 1640s.
Military against the people is, how else do you describe it? Apart from we weren't armed with anything other than democracy in our hands.
So yes, but the context of people who don't know the history, if you're not even if you're not even from the UK or something like that, if you're listening in Los Angeles or whatever, would be that it was the miners' strike and the Thatcher wanted to Margaret Thatcher, the Conservative Prime Minister, wanted to close mines, didn't she, to shut them down, and also it was a fight, really, of a large section of the working class against the Conservative Thatcher government, and it became, it took the style, as you said, of more or less a civil war, didn't it? In 1984, 1985. I mean, I'm just someone as well. I was very young when it happened, but it's just my understanding of it. So it's kind of got. The parallels is the style of which people are repressed, but also, but not. But this, the idea of this is that it's actual deportations. As I said, you're making. That's why you're able to draw even better comparison with what was going on against a sort of class of people who have been identified as the enemy in the 1930s as well. So I mean, you can't really say much different from that because But who are the people who've been identified? How are they identifying people to use these deportations against? Do you think
they're not identifying them? If they look Hispanic, they're picking them up.
they're going to the field.
So it's not even based on official documents or the lack of of ID or. It's just. I think you said that. I think you said that yesterday as well. It's nothing more than the way people look, and they appear to be from Hispanic race, etc.
Which means George Hamilton isn't safe.
That's right. But Rob, am I exaggerating on that? Because I don't want to misrepresent.
No, they're going to, like you said, the church. They arrested somebody at a church yesterday. They're going out to the fields, strawberry fields here, and just chasing people in the fields. They're running from them, and just if you look Hispanic, then you're in trouble. So that's another worrying thing too. Is all these people are going out and protesting, and a lot of them, the majority of them, are Hispanic. It's like they could just pick you up and take you, and they don't even ask questions later. They just take you and detain you. So.
And a lot of people must surely, whether they look Hispanic or other, whatever the difference between people and so-called indigenous USA, whatever, which must be hard to if you're trying to properly define it, it must be very hard to define. Surely a lot of these people will, in many cases, actually do have official documentation about being a citizen of the United States. So how does that, how can they not retaliate legally?
Right. That's only going to get
the way that the immigration process is operating today. that they obviously don't really care about what's going to happen tomorrow or down the road. Of course, there's going to be lawsuits galore. Obviously, the governor of California has filed a lawsuit. The mayor of Los Angeles has filed a lawsuit. And in the end, they probably will prevail. They probably, because Trump has been losing every lawsuit. But what he's done every single time is bought time, push things down the road, because they will get an answer in their favor, the plaintiff, and then he will just appeal, and then that prolongs it, and then they'll send it to the next court, and then they'll appeal that one and all the way up to the Supreme Court, and it'll take years. And he'll probably be dead and gone by the time the case is ever.
But in the meantime, he's got people literally out the country. And why El Salvador? Why this prison in El Salvador, which I'm sure of it's called?
Sorry, again, back to history. In Germany, their dictator, and we know the time period. I'm not gracing that genocidal you-know-what by saying his name.
Right.
But we know who we're on about. Didn't start off with the deportations en masse, but started off with trying to annex other countries, right?
Yep.
So, from, the Rhineland and then Austria, and was placated by Western governments who outwardly said, just like today, oh, that's an external matter for us, and we don't get involved in the internal affairs of another country, which, oddly enough, being British is somewhat ironic, given the fact that the time we started to say this, we owned something like a third of the world's land mass.
No wonder the British Empire, as it stood, yes, at the time.
Bits of its economy. So, yeah, it's odd. That didn't really happen by accident, did it? So it's funny how, there a little theory about technology being really about human laziness. And with that, you can then begin to see sort of a particular wave cycle. So for anyone listening who wants to look up a little bit more about what I'm on about, Kondratyev, a Soviet anthropologist, well, actually a Russian anthropologist who just then ended up in Soviet Russia, I suppose. But a Russian anthropologist, and he looked at particular waves of oppression. He linked it to stock markets, even films and culture being, in times at the peak of a wave, new ideas would come about, and then, down the wave, oppression and just, film studios. By the way, his data around 1923, so he was obviously on something, because right now, what he said and what we're doing culturally is film studios aren't interested in new and innovative ideas. Instead, it's repeats and remakes, safer territory. He also described, somewhat controversially, I'm sure this is what he was actually saying, is in times of economic depravity, people tend to move to the extremes. History repeats itself. It doesn't. But lessons that should be learnt aren't, and the frequency in which lessons should be learned increases. So here we are. Really, it's not that long ago that we had a dictator who was interested in annexation. I'm not about Germany, incidentally. I mean, hey, if you're in Crimea,
Yeah.
probably not listening to this. we're seeing annexations in the Middle East, we're seeing all of this. It's almost like we've returned back to imperialism for what? Root cause analysis here is well, if you're working class, you're rebranded as middle class in the US. But anyway, if you have to work for a living, have a guess which class you're in. If you don't, then have a guess which class you're not in. You're either a capitalist or ruling class, whatever. When ordinary folk end up being starved out, they move to the extremes. And so we don't have swastikas today, we have MAGA hats.
Right.
And the perversity of all of this, most of these MAGA hats were made in China.
True. True.
And so a good example of resistance should be prove you're an American, take your hat off and tell me where the hat was made.
Yeah.
It'll tell you, it'll say made in China, America. Make China's economy great again. So,
and, well, you know, I've already said this when we've done the around the world shows, Make America Great Britain Again, which also incidentally seems to be happening in July, where I'm on good authority that Mr. Trump will accept an honorary place in the Commonwealth of Nations, the old empire. So yeah, we're really heading back there.
Well, I'm going to be a British subject. Oh my goodness. We'll all be British subject.
Well, yeah, again. So
couldn't do any
obviously
word.
Taking light of this, but here's the harsh reality. For one man's ego, sociopathic narcissism seems to be, well, on the increase, according to some. I don't agree. It's just that we've allowed them to end up forming our politics around the planet, being played by people from countries that sound like Russia, China, for example. We get played, and we get played in so many ways in terms of electoral interference. But now, it's a bit too late. We end up with an emulative behavior where a leader needs to have the military, needs to be seen as the strong person.
Strong man.
Yeah, well, I wasn't. There are examples of women though as well. So I was just strong man is the phrase, but whatever else. And here we are discussing this politely on a radio show, when the reality is we can do the theory as much as we want. Right now, just as in the 30s, just as in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, noughties, and now, there are people around the planet who are being ripped apart from families, kids. Not one of us alive listening to this asked to be born. Not one of us.
No, I don't remember that. I don't remember that, even if it might have happened before my memory.
Well, Michael, if you did choose the UK, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. That's
yeah, well, Hobson's choice in the room, like. But here we are.
Yes, so this is going on. We haven't moved on. There's a feeling we haven't moved on from all of this, into something more intelligent as a species, because basically that's what it boils down to. You can feel more superior thinking, well, isn't it ridiculous what's happening with these people here with supporters of Trump seem to be backing, but overall we haven't, as a whole, we haven't evolved, have we? So what we know about CECOT, or whatever it is, El Salvador's mega prison taking Trump's deportees. Beneath a volcano in El Salvador, this is just an article about it, lies a secretive mega prison where the only way out, according to the Justice Minister, is a coffin Known as CECOT, the Spanish language acronym for Terrorism Confinement Center, it's built to hold 40,000 people, and there are no family visits, no access to the outdoors, no rehabilitation programs. People are locked up for 23 and a half hours. So people are being taken from, the streets and in ordinary lives, for these, for being just Hispanic. He said that's not an exaggeration, and some of them are ending up there, it would seem.
Oh, there have been tons of mistakes. People that were either citizens, green card holders, or people that were in the middle of the process and they were going to their court dates. They were, doing everything that they needed to do to get citizenship or get a legal status in any case. But it's, they, as Robb said, they've been going to the courthouses to go to their hearings for their citizenship, and their case gets dismissed as soon as they get in. As soon as it's called, the case is dismissed. They leave the courtroom and they're arrested right outside the courthouse or right outside the courtroom.
And some of these people have been here for 30, 35, 40 years and just going to a regular, you have to come in for a regular yearly or whatever, semi-annual, just to update your citizenship, and then boom, there you go, in handcuffs and gone. And I wanted to tell everybody that, I don't know, it's the chief of staff, Trump's chief of staff himself said that Trump directed them that they need to deport or arrest 3,000 people a day. 3,000 people a day. And Stephen Miller himself, again, Trump's chief of staff, said that number is going to grow. And that's their goal, is to grow that number. 3,000 people a day.
Again, Rob, if ordinary folk are feeling that, there's no hope, there's no support. In Europe, we have welfare systems. In the US, good luck.
Right.
It's very easy then for the politics of blame and envy to kick in. So you end up with people voting against their own interest. At the end of the day, we have this in the UK. We need to get rid of immigrants. So we need, all of that stuff. Great, lovely. How the hell do you think people on an island got here?
Mm-hmm.
Might it be? I mean, what is the point, in other words, of Thanksgiving? In the US, the founding fathers, and the Plymouth colony and the Mayflower, because of course, a load of European settlers arrived in a country that was barren of any human, right?
Well,
there was no one there.
Well, there was a bit, yes.
Clearly, well, obviously, Michael, there was no one there. Clearly, they just arrived in a pristine land with no human. Of course, that's nonsense. It's funny, though. I don't believe in what I'm about to say, but just as a thought idea, shouldn't it actually be the Native Americans who are kicking us?
It's true. That's what I was just going to say. Yeah. Native Americans, Mexicans this is technically their land.
Based on what if you try to look at what would being indigenous actually mean, well, you could go back hundreds of years, or at least you could, we've all travelled around the globe, haven't we? So basically, it's a way of just making a simple point. You could put it down into one sentence. We are all immigrants, essentially. So
we're a nomadic species, and sorry that I seem to be doing far too much talking to what I wanted, but. I find it astonishing that the press and right-wingers don't go, why on earth do people want to go to the US?
Yeah.
Isn't that a sense of pride? They want to come to a country that, I know many ordinary Americans. Sorry, Renee, you're not ordinary. But, I know many I'm joking when I say this, but I know many ordinary Americans who are very proud of their society, understand the idea that the country was forged in slavery and all that, but still forge ahead themselves. I'm very proud of what they do and all of this. This isn't America bashing yet, but the country's territory is something like 10. Well, it's not even 10%. I think it's as low as 3% occupied by humans. There's not enough room. This isn't about immigration. This is about racism.
Oh, yes,
And it's about
completely
greed.
And it's
completely.
about firing people up and keeping people
Power.
excited. But you know what I was thinking about is, during the last big war, and the person that we're not naming, uh,
Oh, go ahead, name him, I guess. Michael, I don't know if you're sure.
I wouldn't. I guess I wouldn't. I wouldn't just wouldn't bother censoring his name. Even people, actually, yeah, people think, oh, we better not mention his name, even when things are starting to happen. Anyway, with other leaders, should we say? But also, I felt there was some parallels with what Theresa May was maybe trying to do about people who had long since arrived with the Windrush and so on. She was trying to question their status and should they really be allowed to be in the UK? It might be second generation, third generation now, but and it's if that had gone as far as this, then you might have seen people deported in the same way, and it seemed to not quite get as far as this. But it seems like it was similar during the tens.
But what I was thinking about was how, in the UK, famously, there were people that were, sympathizers or collaborators with the ruling German party at the time. And, history didn't treat them too well for it, or history tried to hide it. But I mean, even members of the royal family. And, there were the same thing in the United States. There were actually people that were sympathetic to that side and on that side. And, they've really been remembered as, having come down on the wrong side of history. I mean, I can think of names of people still today that are just associated with just that, and or at least that, among other things. But it makes me think of these, these sort of sycophants that we have in Congress and in the government now that just are complicit in everything.
Let me name and shame him. And I defy the Ford company to come for me right now when I say that the founder of Ford was an out-and-out eugenicist and Nazi sympathizer.
So that's Henry Ford, was it?
Henry Ford, who got most of his ideas from someone a little bit earlier. But if I end up going into that,
uncomfortable truth about Charles Lindbergh, who was, big American hero and known around the world for his flight. But, we know now today, because they kind of covered it up back then, that he was really on that team.
Frederick Winslow Taylor,
But also, not surprisingly, the Daily Mail were kind of like what was going on in the 30s for a bit, didn't they?
Again, let's not mince my words here. Appreciate we're on a show and put it on me, but the Daily Mail of the UK supported the black shirts. You see, the thing is, in the UK, my view is we discovered a way of laughing at the likes of Mosley and fascists.
And the Mitford sisters.
And the Mitfords, yeah, absolutely. We found a way of laughing at them. Look at this pathetic German with his Charlie Chaplin. And of course, it wasn't, it was a style. But look at him, he looks ridiculous. We found a way of laughing at it, which completely disarmed
Right.
Anyone who was trying to take it seriously, it became a joke. Without that sense of humor, and look, the British sense of humor isn't. Sorry to any American. I won't apologize to any Canadian because I think you all understand and know Australian. But British sense of humor is rude. It's crass.
Very.
It's born out of a harsh reality in a struggle against fascism. Yet, Germany lost the last World War. Fascism is winning.
Right. Yeah.
So we could get into where you see it all going, yes. But
Rob, do you have any? We're just talking all the time, and you're too polite to jump in. But do you have any other thoughts about what we're talking about, or about what's going on here in LA? Sorry, Michael, I don't mean to take over as co-host here.
No, I just think it's kind of unprecedented, but I mean, like history, like you said, like Jay said, does repeat itself, and here we are, and it's just really, I mean, horrifying what's going on. And like I said earlier, it's only going to get worse, especially leading up to 2 days from now to the parade, and then it's just going to continue after that. Like the homeland, the guy who's in charge of the raids, said that he plans to do this for the next 4 years, every day, he said. So, and they're only going to ramp up the mandatory numbers of deportations and arrests that they need to make, their quota every day. So, and this is just the beginning, I think.
maybe there's going to be continuous protest activity against that as well. So it's going to make the likes of LA much more volatile just to live and work in, or to be in during that time. Now that they've ramped this up, so what are you actually seeing locally now? Do you actually see protests quite a lot when you're just going around? Because all things related to this.
I'm not too far from it. When either is Renee. It's mostly downtown. But this Saturday, I think every part of LA and every part around the country, even in West Hollywood, they plan to have a protest. So it's just going to be, I mean, excuse me for saying so, but a shit show. I mean, all around the country.
Yeah, not just in LA, as you said, in all the major...
in DC. For the parade, and Trump said that anybody that protests is going to be met with extreme force. So what does that mean?
Yeah, but that should be a fundamental right of expression anyway, because you've got the Constitution about free speech, haven't you? That we haven't even got in the UK. Because I said that to René, how there could be defamation, libel here, for example, things classed as hate speech. So really, and also, surely these people should be able to protest about this and say what they want anyway.
Yeah, the Constitution means nothing to our idiot president. So he has no regard for it, no respect for it at all. To him, it's nothing.
I again asked a group of former degree and then diploma students, how many elections is the United States away from losing its democracy? We don't need to go into the answers.
0.
And this was Trump first time. We then ended up with Hindenburg and passed over anyway. So my view as to what happens next is actually the worst case scenario, which again, Renee, we've spoke about. Well, it seems in the past 2 weeks. It feels like it was only yesterday. This spills over into other states, then the dictator will only respond.
We're headed to a civil war for sure.
So it's almost like it's now that, or as it
Rob,
is, and it could go even worse.
I've been avoiding that, totally avoiding saying that, but genuinely, this is the closest I think the US has been since 1861.
Oh yeah, because it was 1861 to 65, and one that actually naming that. It felt a little bit like we were heading slightly that way in 2024 in the UK with the summer riots, didn't it? Slightly the response to what happened with Southport and so on. So you can get these volatile situations, can't you? That But also, you're kind of almost in military rule slightly in a way with the curfews that have been brought in. But it was actually done by the mayor of Los Angeles, was it? It was downtown LA. So you've got curfews between, is it 8 p.m. and 6 a.m., which is typical sort of curfew sort of time, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, it kind of upset me that she did that at first, but then I realized that, it really needed to be tamped down or it was going to escalate with the military. I think she was thinking she doesn't want him to send in more troops. And if she can just get the streets quieted, they won't have an excuse to declare martial law or, trigger the Insurrection Act or anything like that.
So it's real strategy then, isn't it? It's like, what can we best do here to try and put a bit of a lid on this, even from the point of view of not backing the Trump administration? Just, it's just
And
about strategy.
to put things into perspective, I mean, think about it. They're going around rounding up as many Hispanics as they can, Mexicans here in California, when up until 1848, California was Mexico.
Oh yeah. It's something that a lot of people may have forgotten that, I suppose. So that's it's just another irony to the whole thing then about how we're all immigrants, really.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. Yeah.
I wouldn't necessarily say, well, it's a bittersweet irony. The reality is, well, this Saturday I'll eat my words, but there is a genuine risk that if people hit the streets, we've seen what's happened in California as a litmus test. This could be the Reichstag fire moment.
Oh yeah, I think so too. And technically speaking, shouldn't Saturday the dictator's current wife, isn't she an immigrant? Shouldn't they take her?
I think.
Because I suppose it could be a form of like nepotism, or it tends to be the people who are most unfortunate or that would treated as a lower class who take the brunt of these things, isn't it?
Just to respond to Rob, I mean, I don't agree that should be the case, but then again, I don't agree with your government's response either.
Right.
I mean,
yeah.
if again, the logical conclusion to this doesn't make any sense. We'll just keep on getting rid of migrants.
Right.
Well, then eventually, the last person has to turn the lights off when they leave. Europe's got a massive immigration problem, namely from people who have been expelled from the US. So where does it end? Hispanics, do we go to Germans then, to Irish, is Boston gonna depopulate and suddenly everyone who claims to be Irish is sent to Ireland somewhere? I mean, great if if you're looking at this with any form of optimism, which I'm not, and obviously being somewhat sarcastic, but yeah, great. Trump's policy, logically, should mean that the original population of what we call the US is going to be given back. We know that that's not the case. We know that this is about how you look.
Yep.
We know that this is actually nothing to do with anyone being from Mexico or Hispanic. If you don't look, and incidentally, the president of the United States wears that much makeup. I'm wondering whether ICE will deport him first. But this isn't about.
I at least thought it might have been documentation based in some way. I mean, it doesn't make it much more right, obviously, because because that's. I mean, people will struggle with getting documented, and all that. So,
Michael, I do just have to remind everyone there is a great bit of poetry on the Statue of Liberty. And this was, I think, what the United States was founded upon. And it was something about giving huddled masses. We'll take in your huddled masses. I don't know, Renee, Rob, if you want to carry on that.
Send me you're tired, you're poor, your huddled masses, learning to breathe free, the wretched refuge of your teeming shores. Send these, the helpless homeless, tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door.
Yeah, so that's it. And if you couldn't recite that, then you could ironically fail a citizenship test, or I might do. And also, I was just thinking about that scene of The Simpsons, which seemed farcical at the time, where we saw groundskeeper Willie, who's got a Scottish accent, the janitor of the Springfield Elementary School, being deported on a boat back to Scotland, and thinking, oh yes, how ridiculous is that? And then this thing about how The Simpsons kind of sometimes eerily predicts the future. And we're seeing something a little bit like that, only Scotland's a bit nicer than a super prison designed to hold 40,000 inmates, isn't it?
Crazy. Well, I have an appointment to get to, but yeah, I just want to, everybody listening, like, just stay safe, and peacefully protest if you must, if you need to, and I understand that, but don't get caught up and don't get taken. I mean,
no, because if you don't look
very aware.
Yeah. I'll ask one last question then, which is how does the curfew? And this is downtown LA, which is quite a large area still. It's hard to describe what sort of an area it is, but it's a good few square miles, isn't it? How does that work? How do they stop you? You might have reasons to come in and out. You might have a business. You might have to get home.
They're not really stopping cars. It's mostly the protesters on foot that they're going after, and people, graffitiing, tagging stuff, people looting. So they're looking out for them. They're not stopping cars. But what is happening is they've put that curfew in place only for the downtown area, which, when you look at a whole map of LA, is a pretty small area.
It's small against that, but it's not exactly the smallest area, though. Obviously, it's small against the entire metropolitan area, though.
Right, but comparatively, but what's happening is they put a curfew in place, and those people then leave the downtown area, and now they're spreading out like they did last night into other places, Koreatown, and it's just gonna take those people into different areas of LA where there's not a curfew in place,
displacing them into just shifting that on basically down the road slightly.
Yeah.
So it includes the area of the infamous Cecil Hotel, and it includes Skid Row, and all of that downtown area is under curfew.
Oh yeah, for sure, yeah.
But the action in downtown, Michael, was really limited to about a 4 square block area. That's what, I heard it on the news last night. And so it was like a very small situation to begin with. There was nothing really going on.
I wonder, Rob, Renee, just how many people are now looking at maybe Canada annexing some states?
Well, it's funny because, of course, the secession of California keeps coming up, and we had been invited by Canada to join in with them. I wouldn't necessarily mind being part of Canada.
You'd get your healthcare sorted, wouldn't you? Yeah, your free healthcare, that'll be all right.
Free healthcare. And, the other thing is, I also wouldn't mind being a separate country, just California.
Oh, yeah. So this is an interesting one to talk about the potential, of that happening. Yeah, you can carry on and make some points about how, how California might stand on its own if it ever could.
We'd be better off financially. Don't you think so, Rob?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean,
we pay into the federal government much, much more than we get back.
Yes,
we support the red states that are, in the red, literally. So, California would, I think, could easily
handle or fourth largest economy on the planet.
Yeah.
It's just California without the US if it were to stand on its own. So that's the theory about it. But how would you ever get there? Obviously, if he's willing to send the military basically in, and the military, at least it doesn't seem like they wanted to act against the people. They just wanted to stand there almost. But just how would you do you imagine getting to a point of secession and actually getting California to become an independent country from the U.S.? I mean, Texas has been talked about with Texas as well, hasn't it? So
Yeah. It's been talked about with California for a long time too. This isn't new. It's just coming up again because of this. But there have been a lot of people that were for that, especially in certain areas like up north. They wanted to just, leave the United States. And because
well, you've already got your flag sorted because last time I checked, it said California Republic.
Yeah, that's right.
The state flag just becomes, because each state here has a flag, doesn't it? Which you can. But I'm just obviously it would be it's interesting to explore the idea, and people obviously with their frustration now of what's going on, they're not represented by the Trump administration because it's not a state that overall would vote for that, even though it supported, as you say, the Republican Arnold Schwarzenegger. He was actually much more moderate in comparison. But how does it get achieved, something like that, do you think?
Oh,
if I'd like to chime in and say thank you for having me. I have to run, and Renee and Jay, it was great being on with you. Just everyone out there, be safe. And this is only ramping up, and it's not going to get any better anytime soon. But just be safe.
Well, let's just hope that I hope you are as well then this weekend with the tensions obviously running high. But you've got your life to live amongst it all, haven't you? So, and people have Angelinos do have. They're trying to live their lives amongst all of this. So, we've already had to deal with the aftermath of the extensive fires only a few months ago. Now we have all of this.
Yeah. Well, thank you all very much.
But yeah.
Have a safe weekend. Take care.
And take care, Rob. Yes. And thanks for coming on, and giving your actual,
Thank you.
You tell us what you're actually seeing literally right there.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.
Now we're with René and James Martin and me, we'll probably get to a point of wrapping it up quite shortly, though, all the same. So that's what I'm asking you, René, is actually, I suppose it's a big question to ask, but how do you imagine California actually doing it, that idea of secession?
What would happen is they would have to, put it to a vote. They'd have to, propose it in Congress here in the state of California, and then put it to a vote of the people. And if enough people voted for it, we could do it. Now, actually, how it would work physically, what would happen, I'm not sure what the actual process would be of separation. Hopefully, it wouldn't look like Brexit, but it could. I think it would look like Brexit for the rest of the country, because the state of California would be richer and the rest of the country would be poorer when we leave, because we're a contributing state. And a lot of states, are states that, are takers instead of contributors. So they need that.
But it would be opposed, wouldn't it? Calexis would be opposed quite severely by Donald Trump, I assume. The administration. I don't know. Even a Biden government might take a lot of steps, or administration, to prevent it happening. It's a valuable loss.
He's deployed California's own military basically against itself,
which is illegal. You're not supposed to deploy the National Guard unless the governor agrees, and then he's the one that's supposed to do it. So,
but a politicized judiciary means that, anything the dictator says, Supreme Court will rubber stamp.
And I guess that's to your point, Michael, is that, regardless of what the people of California do, is that going to really make any difference? Because he'll just use brute force. But I do wonder if there's going to be a time when the military in general, and individual members of the military, will honor their oath to not follow illegal orders. They are not supposed to follow illegal orders, no matter where they.
And that is so, well, for me, that's really interesting because the last major secessionist movement we saw was a right-wing secessionist movement, essentially for Catalonia,
Oh yeah,
Spain,
Catalonia, yeah,
um,
in Spain.
which was,
Well,
well, the economic independence. It was split by right-wing independence party. So I wonder if Gavin Newsom ends up, fleeing to another country, pending arrest.
Yeah.
so what's he doing about all this at the moment that's happening right under him?
He came on with a fiery speech last night, and he is urging people to keep protesting and keep fighting. And he's asking for, people to donate toward, what's going on so that they can keep fighting against this. He's not asking for corporate donations. He's asking for, grassroots donations.
Yeah. And what about yeah? So he's
and
got your back if you're out protesting, yeah.
Trump is all for the rest, but so far the ICE guy Coleman has chickened out of arresting Gavin Newsom. So we'll see what happens there. He could be arrested.
What about LAPD? Because because as you said, the one the senator in Sacramento was arrested, which is actually the state capital of California, a smaller city. Where do the LAPD stand on this? Are they taking more of the orders nationally, or more under the control, if you like, of the local Los Angeles authorities, who might not want them arresting protesters and people who are, getting caught up in the ICE raids?
Yeah, of course they were, the original law enforcement to respond to these skirmishes which were developing around these businesses that were being raided. And, to be fair, things weren't really out of hand in terms of the crowd. I mean, yeah, they were out of hand in terms of the raids, but there just wasn't that much going on. And so LAPD was responding. The mayor and the governor said, we don't need any help, and so as far as they knew, they were handling it. And then the next thing you know, the National Guard is called in behind the governor's back and the mayor's back, but the governor is in charge of the California National Guard. And so they really haven't done anything. They're supposed to only protect the police. They're not supposed to make any arrests or deal with people directly unless there's a danger for the police officers. But they were arresting people. And so I think that may have stopped now. And the military are just kind of standing around.
So it is. They are being pulled in two different directions. It's just, yeah. So it's kind of, yeah. They must not know quite what to do in some ways, or because they could get in trouble themselves.
They're not trained for crowd control. Military are trained to kill, especially the Marines. But that's the thing. They don't have any background in this kind of a situation. LAPD does. We had plenty of force to contain any major event. Just didn't need them. And then of course it's going to escalate things. It's going to turn, a moderate event into an escalated huge event, just like it did. But what I'm wondering too is if either of you have heard anything about any solidarity protests going on in the UK.
I was actually thinking about that there might be some. It could be some at this weekend and so on. I mean, you usually get stand up to racism and all that, and I'm sure they will have. I'm sure they will have heard all about it. I've got a bit of a family event going on at the weekend, anyway. But Well, I just actually wonder as well, because although we've got citizen journalism, the only real eyes on it is mainly the media. So how are they playing it out to the American people, the mainstream media reports that you've seen about it so far?
The coverage hasn't really been that great, and the
Well,
media still likes to have a big story. So the bigger it is, the better their ratings, and they're
there are, of course, planned solidarity events, but given the fact that the US is just, I mean, live here, decided to cut PBS, the public broadcast service in the US's budget,
Mhm.
you do wonder just how much information is still going out to the US.
Oh, I'll tell you how people are getting their information is through independent news, through different outlets that you find online.
Yeah, we find it on YouTube. We find it on channels other than YouTube. If YouTube had banned them, we find people using Rumble or other alternative platforms on top of that. So there's a whole lot of alternatives to the mainstream media now. But it'd be interesting to see what tone have they taken. If you do watch a news report on CBS, ABC, or Fox or whatever, how's it being portrayed on there?
I feel like it's watered down. I feel like they don't want to take a position, as they obviously should. I mean, it's apparent who's on the wrong side here, but because Trump has been suing the mainstream media, he sued CBS, ABC, and he's talking about he wants to shut down CNN. So we're all running scared, so they don't want to go too far. And then, of course, Fox is making it look like we're all just savages out here burning our city down and making it look as bad as it possibly can.
Because you've got Fox News, which does take that sort of a non-partisan stand, but quite that sort of it probably back Trump. But you've also got your Fox affiliates, haven't you, with the local news, Fox 11 LA, Fox 5 New York. I mean, are they a bit more impartial on those, or is it still that sort of same tone?
No, they're less obvious about it. They try to give a more even-handed approach, and they really are more even-handed than Fox News Network. But yeah, they'll never say anything against Trump. I don't care what he could possibly do. Just like he said, he could shoot someone on, what was it, Broadway or Times Square.
Yeah, you could do that. Yeah, it'd be farcical, but yeah, and it somehow would be played down. He could take a gun out and someone drops down in front of him, and Fox is like, "Gosh, he got in his way." I don't know.
She attacked him, but she ran into his bullet. But I don't know that there's an element here, and it's a sort of a Fox News element. All the people that watch Fox News, which is quite a bit of people, that will probably never change their minds. It's really for people to admit that they've been wrong all along.
Well, that doesn't tend to happen, does it? Even if you get negative effects of Brexit or something, if someone is emotionally attached to something they believe in, they will usually defend it against that at all,
Right.
No matter what.
I guess we'll see what happens, and like I said, we'll watch what happens across the country in 2 days, and then maybe we'll see something going on in some of our former allied countries that is backing us up a little bit, standing alongside us.
And so far, I've not found any protests planned, but there still could be.
Yep,
Yeah.
we'll see. They could crop up, when they see what's going on.
But
They see it's real.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think it probably could actually. But then there's also things like Keir Starmer now takes the same position on on immigration, more in some ways as reform, because he's losing ground to reform. and I think that's getting noticed as well. E.g., there's a plan to no longer fund the hotels, for example, where that are block booked.
Oh, I don't know the situation on that, so I really can't.
Well, it could. I suppose, Jake, you probably know quite a bit about that, obviously. But the idea is that there's people claiming asylum are sort of housed in these hotels that are not being used, or there's not enough business at the moment for them to be. They're not being used in the way they normally have, because lots of hotels actually end up closing in the 10s and 2020s and have been block booked. Lots of people are there waiting with asylum claims who've arrived and so on. So that's this has become a main thing of right-wing parties to seize on.
Yeah, it really has. Yeah, we've had a similar thing here where they've been housed in, hotels or apartment buildings and things like that. So
what does Donald Trump do there? Is he just planning to sort of, stop all that funding and everyone's just out, sort of thing? Is that since he's come in, or is it?
I haven't heard anything about that particular thing. I think he hasn't come to that yet. It's like every day there's a new announcement of some new executive order or some disastrous decision that he's made. And I think he probably just hasn't gotten there yet. It's more important to him to show that he's deporting people than people aren't really looking at the hotel situation and stuff, but
it's interesting that there's a parallel situation. Yeah, we're showing, something that's quite stark in front of people. That people have been put on a plane to end up in El Salvador. There was a plan also in the UK, which James Martin probably remember, about people being deported to Rwanda, and that didn't really literally get off the ground, because it would have done if it was a plane, because it was going to go to Rwanda. So that seems almost as far, slightly farcical as this other idea as well about which is really happening with El Salvador.
Yeah, I felt the same way when I heard that story about people being deported to Rwanda from Great Britain. It was shocking, but it was nowhere near as shocking as this is, because at least going to prison.
I think before I have to go, yeah, again, Britain leads the way. We started with Brexit, then Trump got elected. Right-wing populism took over. Britain started to, process migrants, or trying to, in a dictatorial country, of which the courts, it said, this is illegal. And then there was moves to change the law, and then the last government got voted out. And that's pretty much where we are. But apologies. I also need to
disappear. Yes, just more. But luckily, we know where you're going to go, unlike other people who have had to really. Yeah, this is the thing, isn't it? So it's quite sobering what's going on, essentially, because you can make things seem like, oh, it's just this or just that, but actually, yes, people have just literally been dragged out of where they have lived for years, and they end up in an El Salvadorian prison. So this is crazy. So
shame, and hopefully, well, maybe in our 2026 elections, we can flip Congress, and then they can really take action.
Okay, so there we go. Well, thank you very much, René Barnett, from Los Angeles, and James Martin, and Robb Wood, who's already left the show at this point, but he's from West Hollywood. So yes, and as I said, you've been having to deal with the Los Angeles, the aftermath of the Los Angeles fires as well, and not get the federal funds because of this uneasy relationship between California and the Trump administration as well. So this is just another thing to deal with on top of that.
We've had some bad luck recently.